I have only done 3 high dose journeys in my life so far, and each one has built into the next and has been a continuous story. And I think that was possible because I laid the foundation of several years of microdosing experience, and before that, 25 years of contemplative practice and healing arts modalities. So it all weaves together. And I think that's ultimately nature's goal for us, is for us to connect the science secular world with the sacred and spiritual world.
Welcome to the Psychedelic Diaries. I am Ray Christian, and oh boy, do we have a winner of a show for you today. We'll be discussing remote psychedelic support, solving challenges at the root core, and of course, experiences on high doses of psychedelics. Kayse Gehret, CEO of Microdosing for Healing, will be here for a deep dive and a soul search. We also have a special guest co-host, Carlos Plazola, and a new segment called The Eagle and the Condor. But first, as usual, let's kick things off with a nugget and a noodle. And today's news nugget: needling the NIH. U.S. Senators Cory Booker and Brian Schatz sent an official letter to NIH to essentially figure out what's the holdup with psilocybin. Keta therapy was assigned breakthrough status in 2016, then legalized in 2019, 3 years later. Psilocybin, which has less risk of addiction and more impact on mental health, has been in breakthrough status for 4+ years now, since 2018. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on of late: when the laws can't keep up. Thomas Jefferson said, if a law is unjust, it's not just our right, but our duty to break it. We are in the midst of a mental health crisis, an addiction epidemic, and we're just starting to see the eye-opening science regarding psychosomatic issues. In other words, how much mental health impacts physical health. It's starting to get to the point where it feels amoral to not take the scofflaw approach to psilocybin prohibition. Lucky for us, growing psilocybin mushrooms isn't difficult, and remote tripping is now a viable path, as we'll talk about with our next guest. And Elon Musk said that in his future Mars colony, it will be easier to remove a law than create one. If the process of removing dumb laws remains as convoluted and unpleasant as watching a sausage get made, maybe it's time for those laws to get the Jefferson treatment. Something to noodle on. Well, we have a fun new segment today. A special guest co-host, Carlos Plazola, head of Decriminalized Nature, will be here with us for a few episodes at least. Speaking of changing outdated laws, he was the guy who ignited the Oakland decriminalization. Carlos Plazola, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Ray, I'm happy to be here, and I want to thank you for the invitation. I think it's, I really dig your show, first of all, and I really enjoy getting to know you personally. When I go to the gym and I got 30, 40 minutes, I look for your show because it plugs right into my time frame for going to the gym. Plus, it's very entertaining, so I'm really happy that you invited me to be here. And I really appreciate the segment name, Eagle and the Condor, because I've come to know you being from high tech and having tech background. That's really there's this prophecy in indigenous communities, particularly in the Americas, known as the Eagle and the Condor. The prophecy of the Eagle and the Condor. And it says that when the Eagle and the Condor unite, there will be a elevation of consciousness, a reunification of all of humanity towards a higher state of being. And the initial Eagle and the Condor prophecy was about the unification of the people of the South of the Americas and the people of the North of the Americas. So the indigenous communities that represented by the Eagle of North America and the Condor of South America, they would come together, and then there would be a unification of all people of these lands. But the most recent iteration really came after colonization and Westernism, where the eagle now represents the Western mind, the emergence of scientific reductionism, of technology, and the pursuit of science through technology and reductionism. And but the condor in this scenario now represents ancient wisdom, the interconnectivity of all, the sacred, the spirit. And the idea now is that when we converge the mind that pursues truth in the 3D realm through scientific reductionism, joins hands with the wisdom pursuing mind, or the ancient ways of relating with nature and each other, that then we'll have a whole human species and a better relationship with the great Mother Earth and creation. And so I'm excited about the dialogues with you and pursuing. And I was actually intrigued by your mention of mental health crisis, particularly in your Nugget and Noodle, because I think that's a place where really the condor and the eagle have to meet. The pursuit of mental health treatments through the scientific reductionism has really brought us to a place in pharmaceutical products, but also now emerging psychedelics, which is fascinating. And then from the condor's perspective, it really asks the question, does our sense of depression, isolation come from the fact that we've lost that interconnection between all of us, between us and nature, between us and creation? Some people call spirit the sacred, the infinite. And if we look at an ecosystem approach to healing, we really have to include in that the infinite. We're in this moment in time, but there's been infinite fractals up, infinite fractals down, inward, outward, as below, so above, as within, so without. And so how does all of this fit together? In that? That's really the pursuit of the eagle and the condor, is to bring those two sides together. And so I couldn't find a better person to have these dialogues with than you, Ray, since you come at it from a pretty high-tech perspective. So I look forward to this.
Oh, me too. What a lovely intro. So just to be clear, so am I the eagle and you're the condor?
In this scenario, that's the roles we're playing. Now,
Good.
having spoken with you, I know you carry a lot of condor in you. And likewise, I have a science degree, so I have a master's in environmental science from Yale University. And so I did do a lot of scientific reductionism myself, but was always intrigued by the ecosystem approach, because you can't really conserve biology, conserve species. You can't really protect the environment unless you're looking at the impact of humans. And so politics, economics, our policies about how we relate to each other and the planet are all intertwined in this. So that's the condor is the ecosystem, and the scientific reductionism is the eagle, or technology.
I love this concept and excited to dive in deeper as these future episodes unfold. And kind of the idea that you're bringing up is feels like a paradox, where it's like the two meet, and although they come from different directions, they meet and create something beautiful with their opposing supposed opposing views. And it makes me think of how much, like, for instance, it's the magic occurs where the paradox meets. Like when chaos and order connect, that's where the magic is. When the male and female meet, that's where the magic is. And it makes me think of, I have two little sisters, and I'd like to think that they have a little more masculinity as a result of me, because I know I have more, a little bit of the feminine nature, more in touch with my emotions because of them. And I think the eagle and the condor is just such a beautiful segment. Excited to do this further. So without further ado, perhaps speaking of the feminine, a good lead into our next guest. She is the CEO and founder of Microdosing for Healing. She is a bold entrepreneur in psychedelics that's helping people with small and large dose exploration. Now, Kayse Gehret, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. So you are one of my favorites in this, and in this whole psychedelic industry. Let's dive right in, Kayse. I'm curious because you and I think in some ways have had a similar arc. You built a successful wellness practice, a spa that was hit hard by COVID, and that led you to transition into psychedelics. And some people say that the Joseph Campbell style hero's journey, going into the void with a major letdown, is absolutely necessary to be a shaper of the world. And I'm curious, what lessons do you take from your experience with Solstice that you now apply with your entrepreneurship and psychedelics?
Thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, I think we're all kind of facing right now, faced with a soul journey of sorts. And part of that is reconceptualizing our work and how we view our work. And so for me, the transition was really just a transition versus a loss in some ways, because by forcing us to confront loss and going inward, as you described, it's really just an expression, a soul expression of our work in the world. So working with circumstances, and how do we continue to bring our work and express our soul in the world in the circumstances, and adapting to what is most needed for our communities in that moment. So I think we're all at some level facing that journey right now in our individual lives, and as a collective community. And so it's really kind of listening to nature, listening to what nature is trying to tell us. Nature's talking to us all the time, and helping us, and is always looking out for our best and highest interest. So the more we can listen to that, adapt to what she's saying, that's the journey we're all on together right now.
Oh, I love that. I had a recent experience on psychedelics. It was a smaller dose, but I encountered a tree. And it's funny when you talk to people that haven't worked with psychedelics, this would probably sound kind of crazy, but this tree, it was magnificent. I was enamored by it. I felt connected to it. I could almost see it, like the aura of it. And there's just so much in nature. There's this infinity that Carlos alluded to in nature that we can see. And we sometimes forget that, no, we are nature too. We're like walking trees in a way, and we're all connected. And it's just so easy to get that. Um, Speaking of kind of surprises, as I encountered that tree, Kayse, I love your business model, this idea of harm reduction and access for small and large psychedelic journeys. As you have dove deep into this now, what has surprised you about remote work with explorers?
Yeah, great question. Well, my background, for 20 plus years now, I've really focused on one-to-one, very intimate work. We did in person, whether it's somatic practice, group classes. It was all very much contingent on being together in community and energetically near each other. So I was really curious how that would translate now that we're all, connected in this way, in the matrix, so to speak. And that has been really surprising, that how much our energy and connection stretches over space, time, and distance. I think it's an affirmation that we just, in terms of energy and physics and quantum entanglement, we're just beginning to understand how that really works. Because it has been amazing that we now have a community all over the world, and we're so close and intimate in our experience together across time and space and distance, which is really profound. We really treat people's medicine path as an arc and a lifelong experience. We work with a lot of beginners, and so we really encourage people to approach it. This is just opening the door to a relationship that is going to unfold, evolve, change. It's very different than a drug experience. It's much more like a relationship of a new being that you've met. So we walk people from that opening the door through the arc of experience together.
That's amazing. Kayse, thank you for your work. And actually, what a great example of the eagle and the condor there. You have using technology, allowing us to connect across distant spaces, but in the end, it's about connecting emotionally and supporting each other and helping people on their path. So kudos to you. In a recent post you did, I really, relative to growing world crises, I really liked what you said. You said we can fight and resist change, or we can revolutionize the way we live so these modern problems are solved at the root in a substantive, lasting way. And I couldn't agree more. Kayse, what's your vision for how we can revolutionize plant medicine healing work so all people, even or perhaps especially our most marginalized, can always have access regardless of income, and in a way that is culturally familiar to them? So in the work you do, how can we do that?
Yeah, great points. Thank you. To the first point, it's like I said earlier, nature's always talking to us. And one of the things the medicine helps us is to listen, to that deeper voice that's always available to us. And so it helps us view our current circumstances and challenge in a completely different way. There's so many examples of this right now, from the pandemic to gasoline prices, to inflation, to baby formula. If we really look at what's happening, nature's very clearly speaking, maybe we don't need these things. Maybe we should do less of these things. It's so clear. So the more we engage with nature and look from a different perspective, rather than resisting these changes, that are ahead of us, it's for our best interest. It's intended for our survival. So sometimes I laugh. I picture nature, with the plant and the animal kingdom kind of kicking back and kind of placing bets on humanity, and like waiting how long it's going to take us to figure it out. Right? I'm sure the cows are like really over us and like counting on the years that they have to tolerate us. But yeah, it's funny. Like each week we have a new, what is a crisis and how do we solve this? And so maybe the answer isn't, manufacturing more chemical baby formula. Maybe it's well, maybe what if we, instead of just stopping, the problem in the manner that we've always known, maybe think of a new way, and kind of what is the larger intention of these issues for us. In terms of accessibility and access, I think the future of healing is personal empowerment within local communities. So in our program, we teach people how to cultivate and grow their own medicines, which is it's so fun. It's very connecting. People get really into it, and it ensures not only access, but also you create a relationship with your personal medicines, which is really beautiful experience. So teaching people how to share, how to support each other, how to witness each other's experience, how to hold space. I think the future is going to be, education and training around how to hold space for each other, the basics of shadow work, and how healing actually works versus the Western model of symptom management. And so really giving power to people, getting us back in touch with nature, getting us back in touch with our instincts and our intuition, is the key to the healing in the future.
Wow, you said some very powerful things there I want to lift up. First is the nature is always speaking to us. I have to agree. And I find a lot of my own healing just sitting in nature and opening the mind and allowing it to come in and just listening rather than talking to myself in my head, and let nature in. The other powerful thing you said was the growing our own medicines and personal sovereignty. These are really powerful narratives. So let me ask for healing. Let me ask you a question then about the role of the narrative. You're working to empower people to find their own path towards healing themselves. So what role do you think our personal narrative about the world plays in healing ourselves? And do you think knowing the source and the story of how these particular plants we're using, be they mushrooms, ayahuasca, how they're cared for, how they're grown, is a useful part of that narrative?
Very much so. Yeah. I think it's really important when we begin our path with these medicines to begin with humility, reverence, and respect, and really laying that foundation there. One of my favorite and proudest moments, we were about 6, 7 months into our program, and these mainstream publication articles started coming out in Forbes and Newsweek, and about psilocybin, and all of the covers were a pill, a capsule and a pill. And, we attended our community call meetings, and I thought everybody would be really thrilled and delighted that, it was getting such great mainstream press. And instead, they came out swinging, and they were really infuriated that it was being portrayed as a drug and it was taking nature out of the equation. And it was like, it was such a proud moment. It was like when your kid starts to walk, I was like, I've done my job, done my job. So not only really understanding the benefits for us, but it's flipping it a little bit, instead of viewing these medicines as tools for us as humans, we're actually the tools for nature, is the way I look at it. So allowing for access, also I think sharing the stories of each other is a really important part of the healing process. And so, yes, you can, microdose, and you can go on your path and go it alone, but it's so powerfully connecting for all of us, to connect to each other and share our stories as part of our healing journey.
God, that's beautiful. I like how you touched on this idea of growing it yourself versus the corporate interest. I've developed this. I find that I need to like bite my tongue when I'm talking about some of these corporate companies, because I think all three of us are aligned on this idea of growing it yourself. I just actually finished a third flush of penis envy, and the experience is just delightful. It's bonding. You have these little children that that are growing up from the dirt, literally from the dirt. And on the other hand, sometimes I think, okay, look, yeah, aside from like the really nefarious patents that some of them are pursuing, they are spending a lot of money trying to fight the FDA and the DEA. So I'm like, should I be criticizing them, or is it one avenue that, all right, fine, just let them fight it and be the fullback on the football line that's opening up for the halfback running back like us? I'm not sure what the answer is, but speaking of that recent flush I had, Kayse, if you don't mind taking a stab at the ineffable, I'll share a quick story I had, and I would love to hear one transcendent or mystical experience that you've had. For me, it was actually the first flush of penis envy. I took 3.5 grams, and this is about 2 weeks ago. And Kayse, it felt like you talked about the evolution, which I loved with your community, that it's a process, it's not an event. And for me, it felt like it was feeding off of my previous psychedelic work, almost like compounding interest. It was as if in previous trips, when I've had something profound occur, it was like I went somewhere else. And then later I came back and I'm like, oh, words and stuff and the meat suit and all that. Whereas this time it was as if the infinite was quite literally merging with the now. And it almost felt like AR, augmented reality, where I could see the cosmos, the infinite, at the top of my visual field, and at the bottom of it I could still see my living room. And uh, I'm still kind of coming to grips with the experience and what it meant and the implications. And I'm curious for you, what is a recent or transcendent experience that still resonates?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I resonate with that very much. All of my journeys have been compounding, as you just described. There are continuations. And so a little bit about me. The reason why I focus on microdosing and began with microdosing practice is I have a very, very sensitive nervous system. And among other things, I have a seizure disorder. And so my nervous system would just go fritz out on its own. And so growing up, I was always very afraid to do larger dose journeys or drugs of any kind, because of the sensitivity of my nervous system. So when I came across the concept of doing this in smaller doses, this was very, very, I was like, yes, this feels right to me. And so what we have discovered, both myself and in our community, that starting with microdosing, laying that foundation, and then working up through initiation and threshold doses versus going straight to the high dose journey really, really allows people to gain mastery over navigating different altered states of consciousness, making it easier for integration, making it more part of your everyday life. That sacred and that spirit that you touch into is closer to your real daily life and lived experience then. So it's a very different experience than going straight to, the heroic dose journey and have an either or. It all is merged together. So I have only done 3 high dose journeys in my life so far. And each one has built into the next and has been a continuous story. And I think that was possible because I laid the foundation of several years of microdosing experience, and before that, 25 years of contemplative practice and healing arts modalities. So it all weaves together. And I think that's ultimately nature's goal for us, is for us to connect the science secular world with the sacred and spiritual world.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Carlos, any thoughts, anything come up before we jump into the soul search?
No, that was beautiful. No, I was just contemplating on what you said, so I didn't have any questions for you on that.
Yeah, I think it's, I loved how you weaved in this idea of a contemplative practice. It has felt like it's almost like perhaps psychedelics are the big brother, and the little sister is meditation and contemplative practice and yoga, and they feed off each other. They need each other. And so I love that you brought that up. Kayse, this was a wonderful deep dive. Thank you. And I appreciate the vulnerability, the share about some of the struggles you've had that could resonate with some of the viewers. We got to transition out to the speed round soul search. Okay. So, Kayse, question number 1. Who did you grow up idolizing?
Wonder Woman.
I like that. Question number 2. Okay, Kayse, it's been a long week, Friday night. You don't want to cook. What is your go-to takeout order?
Sushi.
Okay. All right, this one's a little bit deeper. So, Kayse, you are parched. You're walking down the block. You want to wet your beak a little bit. You pop into a bar, pull up a chair, and there sitting next to you is God. And he says, "Hey, Kayse, big fan of your work. I got to run. I have a date with this goddess down the street, but I have time for one quick question. What is the question that you would ask God?"
Ooh, that's a good one. I would ask, what is the best way to reach people? What is it gonna take? Yeah.
That's a really good answer. I like that. Okay, 4th and final question, Kayse. What is a recent hard-earned lesson?
A recent hard-earned lesson. Yeah, I mean, I guess in most recent times, it would be sometimes you have to lose everything to gain everything.
Wow, that's beautiful. Okay, last little question for you, Kayse. Where can the viewers find you?
Easily. So I'm online. I'm on all the platforms, and our platform for our microdosing community is at microdosingforhealing.com.
Okay, we'll get that link in the description. Kayse, you were excellent. Thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right, next week we have Jackie Ruiz, founder of psilocybin method, on the show. Come join me and other high dose explorers on the psilocybin soiree. Promo code is mushroom22. Carlos Plazola, our guest host for the day, guest co-host. Any parting thoughts for the viewers?
Yeah, a couple of just brilliant things that Kayse stated that I want to lift up. You have to lose everything to gain everything. I love that. That's been my journey. That's known as the hero's journey. So absolutely, for those people out there who are struggling, keep in mind it might be part of your journey. Embrace it, walk through it, and there might be something beautiful on the other side. And the other beautiful thing I want to lift up that Kayse said is we are the tools for nature, and I sincerely believe that we are simply the emerging consciousness in our form for nature to experience itself, and we have a certain duty to make sure we live well with the Creator and our great planet here that made us, so that we can then share what we're experiencing back with it. So thank you for that, Kayse. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and Ray, wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for the invite again.
Oh, thank you for saying that. What a pleasure to have you. Well, thank you for watching this episode of Psychedelic Diaries. For the lovely Kayse Gehret and Carlos Plazola, I'm Ray Christian. See you next time.